The Mongols were responsible for the Ottoman Empire, the spread of Islam across Asia, brought gunpowder to Europe, created the Mughal Empire in India, and is even responsible for the meaning of the word kamikaze. So let's look at the rise and fall of the Mongol Empire. Chapter 1. Creating an Empire. The Mongol Empire started here, in modern-day Mongolia and Siberia. The Mongol people were one of the many nomadic groups living in this part of the world, and the Mongols would constantly fight over who controlled what territory. But they were not a united people. Within the Mongols were various clans. Each clan claimed to be the descendant of a legendary Mongol warrior of the past, and each of these clans fought for control over lands within the Mongol ethnic group. One of these clans was the Khanic Mongols. In 1162, the leader of the Khanic Mongols had a day as Genghis Khan, but his father called him Temüjin. He was named after a man his father had captured on the day of his birth. This showed to other people that his father was a strong man, and therefore Temüjin would become a strong man also. In Mongol culture, this type of prestige was important in politics. At the age of 9, his father was killed. Temüjin was too young to rule, and so another clan took over the leadership of the Khanic Mongols. As a result, Temüjin lost all his power, and these were vengeance against the people who took his clan from him. To exact his revenge, he would need an army. So over the years he gathered a band of Mongol warriors who followed him. His small army impressed the chief of another tribe. This chief married his daughter Temüjin, thereby creating an alliance between Temüjin and the chief. Together they conquered a territory called Orkhon Valley. This region was fertile, controlled important trade routes, and was religiously important. It was believed that whoever ruled over this valley was capable of creating great empires. By the age of 40, Temüjin was strong enough to attack the clans which took his father's land, and he conquered the Nemean and Möngke clans in 1204. Their warriors now became Temüjin's warriors. Their unmarried princesses married Temüjin's Zantil, and their rulers now became Temüjin's vassals. But Temüjin would rule his land differently from other Mongols, because other Mongols put people in positions of power based on family relations. So a stupid uncle could be a general, but a smart foot soldier could not. Temüjin instead put people in positions of power based on their performance. So if you are a nobody who is really good commanding an army, then even you could become a general. He created a system where people cared more about personal success than family relations. This meant that Temüjin's clan had better administrators, better generals, better everything. And if you were a nobody who rose to power in Temüjin's system, then you would become a strong supporter of him because you owed your wealth and status to him, thus creating a system that was both competent and loyal. In just a few years, Temüjin became the most powerful Mongol in Mongolia. Thanks to this system, the rest of the Mongolians were afraid that Temüjin would come after them next, and so all the leaders of the Mongol clans came together to hold a meeting in 1206. At this meeting they discussed what to do about Temüjin. He held a lot of prestige. He was a competent commander, an efficient ruler, an offended diplomat, and so they decided that the best thing they could do was crown Temüjin the great Khan of all Mongols, the Genghis Khan. This position was similar to that of an emperor, and so he created the Mongol Empire in 1206. At the age of 44, Chapter 2, Genghis Khan's Empire. This new Mongol Empire had only two simple goals. The first was to make sure only Genghis Khan's family could rule this empire, while he had created a system where only the most competent people get positions of power. This rule did not include his own family, and by securing that only one of his sons could become the next great Khan after Genghis had died, it meant that nobody else could fight for the throne, and as a result the empire was a lot more stable, because random people couldn't start a rebellion to become the new great Khan. The second goal was to secure the Mongol borders by conquering all their conquered, then they will eventually start a rebellion. But there is a solution. to this problem: assimilation. What this meant is that a person was forced to abandon their culture, their custom, their whole way of life, and replace it with the Mongol culture, the Mongol custom, and the Mongol way of life. But in order to understand how a person could become a Filgol, we first need to understand who the Mongols were. The Mongols lived in large groups. These groups were called hordes. A single horde could be a few hundred people or tens of thousands of people. But in order to get enough, they had to move around a lot. That's because Siberia doesn't have a lot of food and materials. When a particular area ran out of food together, grass for cattle to eat or animals to hunt, then the entire horde would pick up all their belongings and migrate somewhere else. And in order to assimilate other people into this culture, they forced people from other tribes and hordes to join Mongol hordes. Every person had a specific location within the horde where they could set up their tent, depending on their prestige within the horde. These outsiders were forced to place their tents between other Mongols. That meant that all the neighbors were Mongols, and they didn't have anyone of their own tribe to practice their own culture with. As a result, they were forced to participate in the Mongol culture instead, and over time, that children would grow up to become Mongols. And so the other tribes slowly had their own culture replaced with the Mongol culture, and tribes that went along with the assimilation process were rewarded. They were given land, they were given a share of the spoils in war, and they received positions within the Mongol government. But at the same time, the Mongols would also take over useful parts of other cultures. For example, this process I just described wasn't invented by the Mongols. The Mongols landed from the Turks when they conquered them. When they invaded China, the Mongols learned about catapults, hand grenades, and simple missiles from the Chinese. And there are hundreds of small examples of Mongols adopting useful parts of other cultures, adding their technological and cultural distinctiveness to their. And speaking of invading China, after the Mongols had subjugated all the tribes